We begin. Our opening words come from American poet Linda Gregg. A dark thing inside the day. So many want to be lifted by song and dancing, and this morning it is easy to understand. I write in the sound of chirping birds, the almonds still green and thriving in the foliage. Up the street, a man is hammering to make a new house as doves continue their cooing forever. Bees humming, and high above that, a brilliant clear sky. The roses are blooming, and I smell the sweetness. Everything desirable is here already in abundance. And the sea. The dark thing is hardly visible in the leaves under the sheen. We sleep easily. So I bring no sad stories to warn the heart. All the flowers are adult this year. The good world gives, and the white doves praise it all. Our opening hymn this morning, tell you a little bit of the history. was written by the Unitarian Universalist singer-songwriter Alicia Carpenter. The composer who revised the hymn's harmony, John Edward Giles, was the music director of the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Evanston, Illinois. Giles composed more than 120 songs and 50 choral pieces during his brief career, which was cut short when he died from complications from AIDS. This is hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
And please stay standing for our unison affirmation, which can be found on the inside of our orders of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So be it. Good morning. Jackie and Irv Michaels, I love seeing you here. Welcome to one and all. Welcome if you're here after a long time of maybe not having been able to get here. Welcome if you are walking in for the first time this morning. Welcome if you've been here for eons. We are here that we might have life and have it more abundantly, so that we might share it with others. Here may our minds stretch, our hearts open, our spirits deepen. Here may we learn, question, and do justice. Here may we acknowledge our brokenness and be ever stirred by love's infinite possibilities. Welcome to the First Parish in Bedford. We welcome you here just as you are. We celebrate the many diversities among us: age, race, class, abilities, sexual orientation and gender identity, religious and political beliefs. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, which means we are united by shared values rather than by creed or by dogma. Respect, compassion, justice, and peace. This is how we live our faith. My name is Megan Lyons. I'm one of the ministers here. And it is really a treat for me to welcome into the pulpit this morning Catie Scudera. Thank you for being here with us. We're so glad that you are here. Catie is currently serving as the intern minister at the Arlington Street Church in downtown Boston. She graduated from Harvard Divinity School in 2012, during which time she served as the student minister of the Winchester Unitarian Society. Her other UU connections include the Church of the Larger Fellowship's prison letter writing ministry and the partner church council's work in India, particularly with the local Unitarian-run A. Margaret Barr Children's Village. And you can ask her more about that later in coffee hour or right after the service, any of that. We're so glad you're here, Catie. Welcome. Following the service, join us for coffee and fellowship. You can head out through either of these doors and stop by the welcome table, find out a little bit more about us, and tell us about you. You can also fill out a little blue connection card. It's in each of your pews. And let's see, in the back of your order of service, I call your attention to an announcement section. Announcements are in the back, and some of the things happening this week at First Parish are in the beginning. So take a look there. I'd also like to say that our art gallery is constantly happening here at First Parish. We're starting a new exhibit. If you have ever heard and enjoyed the poem Spring Cleaning by Sarah Getty, it's sort of become a beloved poem here. You can read it. It's in blue. It's out in the entrance hallway on the wall. And if that poem inspires you and you make any art that might relate to this theme, you can submit it to our gallery. And you can find out more about how to do that by reading that little blue announcement out there. Also, this month, our student minister, Laura Felskolten, is going to be offering a 4-evening session class. It's about transcendentalists, and it starts this Tuesday. It goes from 7 to 9, and it's 4 Tuesday evenings. Discussion topics will include the origins of transcendentalism, Emerson, Margaret Fuller, and the legacy of the transcendentalists. So you can email her or talk to her after the service. Also, today is the day that mystery friend letters are due. Anyone who wrote a mystery friend letter? Great. These are connections paired between older and younger pairs in our congregation, and there's a box out there if you're wondering what to do with it. All right. Welcome, one and all. We are so glad you're here. And now a stewardship moment from DJ Prowell.
Good morning. I'm a little bit more together. I was here for the 9 o'clock service, and I live in Lowell. And normally I get up at 5:30 every morning for work. So I don't worry on the weekends about waking up because I wake up by 6:30. This morning I woke up at 8:30. And I had to be here by 9. So, anyway. My name is DJ Prowell, and I am here this morning to share a stewardship moment with you that is focused on the Social Responsibility Council, an elected body of your parish that I am honored to serve on. When we speak of stewardship at First Parish, we are not just asking for your talent, treasure, and time to support our superb staff, nor to shore up the walls and steeples of this historic building, but also to help bring social justice to our community here in Bedford, to our neighboring urban populations in Lowell and Boston, and finally beyond our shores to faraway places like Uganda, Haiti, Vietnam, and more. Every year, this community votes to spend a portion of the church's budget, most recently $10,000, to be set aside for grants to programs that you parishioners request be funded. It has been my greatest privilege to serve on the Social Responsibility Council that gets to decide where your monies will go to. How does this happen? Parishioners submit proposals to SRC asking us to give a cause money, justifying the expenditure based upon the 7 Unitarian Universalist principles, and the council reviews and votes on the grants. Before I tell you about a few of the grants that have been funded, let me explain how exciting and dynamic it is to be a part of the process and how it's your generous donations that make it happen. Imagine a room of like-minded people discussing the state of social justice in the world, both locally and afar, and then imagine those people getting to fund work that might make a difference in people's lives, be it the Bedford Plaza families down the street or an orphanage in Hue, Vietnam that assists children with disabilities. Your pledge to First Parish makes this happen. In this past year, we have funded iPad tablets for disabled adults who have communication disorders and can express themselves through the use of the computer. And because as adults living in group homes, they had no other funding for these devices. In addition, the senior youth group took on a project where they raised $750 for a prison book program, and the SRC pledged to match every dollar that they raised, and therefore this church gave the program $1,500. In addition, we make sure that when First Parish members serve dinner on the second Friday of the month at the Lowell Transitional Shelter, that we provide the milk for the 100 to 150 adults that eat dinner that night. And if you're interested, it's a very easy way of doing some volunteer work and feeling good. And Sandy Ferrara is actually here today, this service. Sandy, can you raise your hand? If you're interested in finding out about serving at the transitional shelter, see Sandy at the coffee hour. There are many more examples, but time is brief for these moments. The web page of the church lists programs funded as well as our annual reports. But in addition to providing grant money from your generous pledges, the SRC is also asked occasionally to give advice to the governing board regarding social justice issues. Recently, we researched and provided speakers to the board from a dynamic program in Lowell, United Teen Equality Center, as our suggestion for a 3-year commitment of this parish for the first Sunday collection. As part of that process, I have to say that I was so energized and excited about the great work that is being done by this group. And even more than giving financial support for them, I am enthused by the possibilities of a real partnership between our parish and this organization. This can be done because you attend a church that is dedicated to living out its principles and going beyond these walls to bring about social justice in the world. It is the reason that I attend First Parish Church in Bedford, and even more, it is the reason that when I decide how much I am going to pledge, I am going to be as generous as I can be. Giving my time, my talent, and my treasure to First Parish allows me to be both a steward of the church and going beyond, to serve justice in many areas of the world. Please consider the good works that you help fund when making your 2014-2015 pledge. Thank you.
Good morning. For the time for all ages today, I'm going to need some volunteers. We're going to be making a story picture together using the improv game Yes and. So it is an improv game, but you don't have to worry. There's no acting involved. We'll just be making a still picture. And I'll be up here as the director, so you won't be all by yourself. But do I have maybe 5 or so volunteers who are interested? These two seem extremely enthusiastic. Do you want to come up here? Yeah. Got another. We may have 5 already. Does somebody want to come down from up in the gallery? Does he want to come down? Yeah. Okay. That's fine, yeah. Oh, we have a whole troop now. Does somebody... Thank you all for volunteering. This is kind of a big risk. You don't know me. You have no idea what I'm going to make you do, and yet you're all here. Oh my gosh. All right. All right, so this should be fun. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to come up, the both of you? You can join in. Yeah. All right, so now we have a diversity of ages in our picture story. All right. So in this game, what we do is we pick a place and then we make our bodies look like things or beings that live in that place. And I was thinking that because Unitarian Universalists really like being out in nature, it's part of our spiritual practices, even when it's cold outside, that maybe each of you could pick something that goes into a park. Do you have parks here in Bedford? Yes. What sort of things are in a park? Does anybody know? A tree and a swing set. Do you want to be a tree? Come over here. Yeah, you're going to be a tree now. You suggested it. Do you want to be a person who's on a swing set? Just kind of like shape yourself like, oh, man. All right, there we go. There's a tree. All right, so you're a person on a swing set. Great. Now, what else is there besides trees and swing sets? Huh. A slide. Do you want to pretend that you're a slide? Do you want to be a person on a slide? I think you said the same thing. So you can be a slide and you can be a person getting onto a slide. Does that sound good? You suggest now you have to do it. Go on. There we go. All right, what else is there? We've got a slide. We have a person excited about being on a slide. What else is in a park? What kind of animals are in parks? Dogs. Do you want to be a dog? Yes. And what else might be near a dog? What would interact with a dog in a park? A cat. Oh, goodness. Do you want to be the cat down here? There we go.
And the cat sound like this.
That's true. That was excellent. This is now no longer a still picture. Now we're acting. Yeah. All right, so you're our friend who's going on the slide, but what are the two of you going to be? What are you in the park? Are you going to be the cat now? Or a squirrel? You could be anything. Do you want to be the person walking the dog? There we go. We found something that she liked. We're good. Okay. And how about you? You've our last part of the picture. What else is in a park?
Swings.
Do you want to be next? We've got somebody on a swing over here. Do you want to join him? Yeah, go on. There's usually 2 swings, right, at least? Okay, so now we can do our brief acting out. We have somebody on a swing. We have somebody in a tree. We have the slide, person on a slide. You're a dog. What does a dog say? There we go. So we have this full picture up here that we all made by working together, right? And this sort of scene really reminds me of what we do at church. As a church, what we have is a general idea of something we like a park, or maybe a sacred scripture, maybe a spiritual practice, or a social justice cause we're really passionate about. And each of us get together and contribute our own idea about what we think should go into that big general idea. And we make this beautiful picture together. And not just one person can make the picture. Everybody has to be included, respect each other's contributions, and work together for us to create this whole space. Would any of you like to go play in this park? No. Can we give all of our kids and our grown-ups a round of applause? Nicely done. I know you guys have your arms up forever. Thank you so much. Now, I believe that the children and teachers are going to be going out for their in-gathering now. I'd like to tell you a little bit about our next hymn as everybody gets up. So number 211, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder, is an African-American slave spiritual from the early 1800s. This hymn connects the exile and enslavement of the Jews in Egypt with American slavery, both in the shared sorrows and tribulations and the shared hope for freedom and empowerment. I'll give that back to you.
My name is Jeannie Balfour, and I'm one of the lay visitors here. Now is a time to come and light a candle for a joy or a sorrow. And at the end of the service, I will stay here if you would like to light a private candle. This last candle is for those thoughts that remain within us.
Will you join me in the spirit of prayer? Dear Spirit of life and love, the God we know by many names and through many ways, we are so thankful this morning to be with one another in this beloved community of spiritual seekers. We ask that by participating in this gathered community, we grow to embody the ideals of welcome, compassion, and justice. In particular, this morning, we seek to rejoice with those who have shared a joy for our great teachers. And we seek to remember with sympathy those who have shared a sorrow or concern for families suffering from illness, for family difficulties and losses. May the Spirit of love help us to express our deepest selves and care for one another in times of difficulties and celebrations. We acknowledge that we sometimes fall short of our spiritual values and that both shared religious community and individual reflection will help us become the best we can be. Now we will take a quiet moment together to reflect, to remember, and to rejoice. Amen.
Our reading this morning comes from Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Anthony David Makar. He borrows a theological metaphor from late Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Forrest Church, who wrote that our faith is like a grand cathedral. Unitarian in the one light that shines through the windows, and Universalist in the many windows through which we experience that light. Here are Reverend Makar's words. The building of our cathedral of the world never ends. It needs every one of us, but it is worth it. It is bold. It symbolizes a religion which essentially says abundance. Abundance of light, abundance of mystery, abundance of humanity, abundance of involvement and enterprise in building community. The challenge for us, ultimately, is this. How shall we live in this abundance? Will we allow it to change us? Will we let it sink in, transform us from within?
All right, this is the big reveal on the first Sunday of the month offering. After much deliberation and after inquiring from all sorts of groups within the congregation, the parish board has thought and then voted to use our monthly designated offering to support not one but two fantastic organizations for a commitment of $2,500 per year, to each of those, $2,500 to each of those organizations. And this will happen for the next 3 years. The board considered our past generosity. All of the funds that came in over the course of 1 year enabled us to realize we actually are a generous enough people that we can support two organizations. And so we've decided to trust this generous spirit and go with it again. And we are really excited about the partnership opportunities in both cases. So the first one, you heard a little bit about it from DJ. This is a great organization in Lowell. It's called the United Teen Equality Center. And what's exciting about the United Teen Equality Center, which we go by UTEC, that's what they talk about it themselves as UTEC, this is the organization that serves a population of young people who are some of the least noticed or supported in our nearby Lowell community. There are a lot of ways to support younger teens, such as YMCA and after-school tutoring, and the older the teens get, the less likely that services are reaching out to that group of folks. So these are teens who have a history of being in gangs for security, simply to walk from one place to another. It's a little bit safer if you have a group that's your extended family, so that's one main reason people actually form a gang. Some of them have a court history, and a lot of them are teenage parents. And yet they come to this youth program to get an education, to build community, to stay off the streets, and to get and keep a job. There are lots of job opportunities, and all of the people who go in there get all of these opportunities presented to them, and so many people come out way better than they went in. So we are really excited to learn more about UTEC and tell you more about it as time goes on, but it is a great organization. We had someone from their site come and tell us all about it, and our eyes lit up. It was just wonderful. And so that's one, and the second one is we decided last time we had a 3-year partnership. We partnered with the New Life School in Uganda, and we had a great time with them, and we decided, but we love sponsoring a Unitarian school. Maybe we could do that again. And so we're going to partner with a Unitarian school in Catie Hills, and this is in the northeast part of India. And we have a long relationship with that part of the world. There's 10,000 or more Unitarian children, people who are there, Unitarians who are there. And we're excited to choose a school. We're in the process of doing that. But I thought for one second we might ask Catie to just come on up, because she's actually worked in this area and with children in orphanages there and Unitarian children. Do you have a second to tell us one sentence about that experience? Because it's a neat endeavor.
So I'm very excited that you all have voted to sponsor a school out in northeast India in the Catie Hills. The Unitarian community has been there for about 125 years, and I myself lived there for about a year to work on this orphanage project that Meg was telling you about earlier. And all of our students at that orphanage attend a locally run Unitarian-sponsored school. Many of the schools in the area are run by religious organizations, especially in rural areas where many children would not have any opportunity for education otherwise. And I'm so excited for all of you that you'll be able to partner with one of these schools and send kids to school possibly the first time in their lives, so they can really get that education that is so essential in our modern world. So, thank you.
So now you've heard about these two places. From the bounty of our lives, we give of our hearts, creating possibility for all. We thank you. The morning offering will now be gratefully received.
Every improv show is truly a surprise, both for the audience and for the performers. It's not at all like when I've gone with my spouse to see Raisin in the Sun or The Glass Menagerie, where we have the option to read the play, or at least the Wikipedia article, ahead of time. At an improv show, there's no playbill that gives a list of who's playing which character, and a background of the playwright, because there are no definite characters, because there is no script. We have a buddy in an improv troupe, and they always start their shows by asking a member of the audience some questions. Where do you live? What's the worst thing about being home for the holidays? You say you're here with your husband. Is that your husband? Oh, that's your brother. Why is your brother the third wheel on a date with your husband? Using cues from that initial conversation, the troupe creates scene after scene, right there on the spot. No script, no pre-planning. In any given performance, my buddy might be a pouting child or a tugboat or a rat in the Allston-Brighton neighborhood of Boston, terrorizing a group of college students. There's great excitement, anxiety, and hope during these performances. What will they come up with next? Will they manage to be funny? For a number of reasons, I believe that improv is a theater form well suited to Unitarian Universalists. Improv is an art form with no director, no singular holy script, and yet improv has a vital history and best practices that the actors can draw on. To my Unitarian Universalist ears, this sounds quite familiar. Many of the best practices of improv closely align with our faith's historic theology and modern-day principles. We could talk about the importance of a cohesive troupe, or allowing the rest of the troupe to speak as much as you do. But there's one rule in particular I'd like to focus on today as a practice for the progressive faithful, and that rule is yes, and. Comedian and producer Tina Fey writes about yes and in her book, Bossy Pants. She writes, "The first rule of improvisation is always agree and say yes. When you're improvising, this means you are required to agree with whatever your partner has created. Hence my friend's jumps between a child, a tugboat, a rat." Now obviously in real life, you're not always going to agree with everything everyone says. But the rule of agreement reminds you to respect what your partner has created, and at least to start from an open-minded place. Start with a yes, and see where it takes you. She adds, "As an improviser, I always find it jarring when I meet someone in real life whose first answer is no. No, we can't do that. No, that's not in the budget. What kind of way is that to live?" Have any of you heard these attitudes at church recently? Either a, "Yes, let's see where that takes us," or a, "Oh no, we can't do that, not in the budget." I certainly have, particularly the latter. Let's return to Tina Fey. The second rule of improvisation is not only to say yes, but yes and. You are supposed to agree and then add something of your own. If I start a scene with, "I can't believe it's so hot in here," and you just say, "Yeah," we're kind of at a standstill. But if I say, "I can't believe it's so hot in here," and you say, "Yes, this can't be good for the wax figures," then we're really getting somewhere. To me, yes and means don't be afraid to contribute. It's your responsibility to contribute. Your initiations are worthwhile. Fey gives us two things to think about. What if we said yes more often? And what if we considered every contribution, including our own, as a potentially worthwhile idea? These questions make me reflect on whether or not I'm living out our Unitarian Universalist principles: the inherent worth and dignity of every person, the use of the democratic process, acceptance, and encouragement of one another. In religious terms, the rule of yes and challenges us to adopt a theology of abundance instead of a theology of scarcity. The theology of abundance is trusting that we have enough and even just enough to spare. It has deep religious roots in two faith traditions that have thrived on the North American continent: indigenous religion and Christianity. Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Clyde Grubbs says that living out the indigenous principle of abundance means discerning within our religious communities what resources have been given to us in abundance, such as love, enthusiasm, joy, good singing, smart and well-connected lay leaders, and finding ways to maximize those resources instead of dwelling on any perceived limitations. It also requires discernment about how much is actually needed, as we only borrow the earth from our grandchildren. Australian writer and Aboriginal activist Samantha Nolan Smith writes, "Indigenous people around the world tell a remarkably similar story about a state of nature which is free, abundant, open, and trusting, where everyone has their things provided for, where one only takes what is needed, and where time is allowed for the replenishment of resources." The indigenous theology of abundance gives us some healthy boundaries to practice in community. Give and act with trust in abundance while remaining responsible stewards of our abundant earth. Christianity's theology of abundance also assumes communal responsibility. Jesus was outspoken about generosity. In the Gospels, he's quoted as saying, "Sell your possessions and give alms. Do not keep striving for what you are to eat and what you are to drink. And do not keep worrying, for it is the nations of the world that strive after these things, and your God knows that you need them." For those of us who have not lived a life of plenty, this sounds like pretty bad advice. Give away everything we have? Don't think about where our next meal is coming from? Are we really supposed to survive on faith alone? I think this is not quite what Jesus meant. He makes an important distinction between the nations of the world who strive after all these material things and the community of faith. Perhaps it is in religious community that we create an environment of abundance by providing for one another, in stark contrast to the materialistic and egocentric culture around us. Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Tom Beloit writes, "One story goes that Jesus is preaching to a large crowd, a crowd that may have traveled quite a distance, may have had to wait longer than they had thought. The day wears on and the crowd begins to grumble that they are hungry. Jesus calls for food to be brought forward, and his disciples bring forth a couple of loaves of bread and a single fish. A miracle happens. 5,000 are fed. The liberal interpretation of this story goes that as the day wore on, people began to worry about whether there would be enough to eat. So they started to conceal whatever food they may have carried with them, worried that others would see what they had and ask them to share. Jesus' miracle, according to this interpretation, is getting people to share freely, to partake of the abundance that already exists, rather than closing ourselves off from one another because of a sense of scarcity. As blogger Kate Perkins writes, "In the economy of God, everyone has all that they need, and there is enough always to go around." In our Unitarian Universalist faith, we believe that if there are any gods among us, God's hands are our hands. It's up to us to spread the abundance of God's economy, asking for what we need and giving all we can. In Unitarian Universalism, we believe that every person has something unique and important to contribute to our ongoing pursuit of spiritual enrichment and communal justice. We may ask ourselves, what talents do we each have to joyfully share with our communities? Unfortunately, despite indigenous and Christian roots in abundance, a theology of scarcity thrives today in the United States. What is the theology of scarcity? The theology of scarcity is a theology of desperation, of fear, of selfishness. Unlike the theology of abundance, living a theology of scarcity gives a feeling of not having enough, and certainly not having enough to spare. It's a little ironic, isn't it? Here we are in the United States, the wealthiest country in the world, and yet there is a great feeling of scarcity. It is our own culture's fault. The cult of consumerism tells us every day through commercials and billboards and subway ads that we do not have enough and we should really try to get more. This makes everyone feel desperate. The ever-growing economic gap between those who are very rich and those who are not results in hoarding behavior in almost everyone, regardless of economic status. For those who have not, there is a clinging on to whatever's left, and for those who have, there is a great and deep fear of becoming someone who has not. This also makes everyone feel desperate. Social Darwinism, an evil misapplication of science, teaches that only the strong survive because we are in competition with one another for very limited resources, as opposed to being connected and reliant on one another through the interdependent web of all existence. This also makes everyone feel desperate. Christian Old Testament scholar Walter Brueggemann says it in this way: "If you are like me, you read sacred writings on a good day, but you watch Nike ads every day. According to the Nike story, whoever has the most shoes when they die wins. The Nike story says there are no gifts to be given because there is no giver. We end up only with whatever we manage to get for ourselves. This story ends in despair. It gives us a present tense of anxiety, fear, greed, and brutality. It produces child and domestic abuse, indifference to the poor, the buildup of armaments, divisions between people, and environmental destruction. It tells us not to care about anyone but ourselves, and it is the prevailing creed of American society. There's no quick and easy way to rebuild and replace the dominant culture of scarcity with a culture of abundance. But we can start where we are and practice abundance in our congregations. So even when we're pummeled by scarcity the rest of the week, anytime we're in church, we can remember, yes, and. And if enough of us practice a theology of abundance together, perhaps we can change hearts and minds outside our congregation's walls as well. This is a critical practice for us, especially if we hope to weather truly lean times and periods of crisis. I was so proud of my current church after the Boston Marathon bombings, which happened just 3 blocks away from our house of worship, that we did not succumb to a theology of scarcity. We didn't close up our doors and hide, worried that there was no budget of money or heart for a tragedy. We gave each other permission to be creative in healing ourselves and offering healing to our city. Someone suggested we host a candlelight vigil, even though the bombers were still on the loose. Yes, and. Someone suggested we invite our religious neighbors and make it interfaith. Yes, and. Someone suggested we sing Amazing Grace and read from Anne Frank and Wendell Berry. Yes, and. Someone suggested we place blank cloth ties on our church garden's fence so that people could leave their prayers for peace and love. Yes, and. Someone suggested we take down the thousands of prayer ties before the winter weather destroyed them and weave them into a quilt. Yes, and. I cannot calculate how much would have been lost if every time someone had made a suggestion, the first reaction had been, no, there's not enough. In spite of tragedy, our faith community lived out an abundance of creativity, of courage, of love. Accepting and encouraging each other together, we were strong and bold. As we heard in the reading from Reverend Anthony Makar, the challenge for us ultimately is this: how shall we live in this abundance? Will we allow it to change us? Will we let it sink in, transform us from within? Could we try it? Could we try being together in an abundant yes and sort of way? Perhaps we can put aside our worries and limitations, resisting the theology of scarcity from the larger culture. Our congregations are overflowing with love, enthusiasm, joy, good singing, passionate members. Everything desirable is here already, in abundance. May we start with a yes to one another and see where it takes us. May we have the courage to offer our ideas and talents, knowing they will be met with love. May we remember that in God's economy, there is enough, and even just enough to share. Blessed be, and amen. Let us close in song. Our final hymn, The Fire of Commitment, number 1028 in the Teal Hymnal, was co-written by the Reverends Mary Catherine Morn and Jason Sheldon when they were both serving the First Unitarian Universalist Church in Nashville, Tennessee, in honor of the congregation's 50th anniversary in 2002. Tina Fey writes, I always find it jarring when I meet someone in real life whose first answer is no. No, we can't do that. No, that's not in the budget. What kind of way is that to live? May we feel blessed in what we have, be generous in sharing with those who are in need, and ask for help when we are wanting. May we be courageous and build countercultural communities of creativity and love. May this parish live the life abundant together, greeting one another with acceptance, encouragement, and yes, and. The service begins when the service ends. Blessed be, and amen.